Welcome to the Rustic Garden. Today I want to talk about oil sprays. It's my second video in a home garden spray series, home remedies series that I'm doing. First thing, if you saw the first video, it was on soapy water spray. First thing I want to talk about is making home garden sprays. Don't trust, always test spray. You're responsible for whatever you create. From what I'm talking about, what you find on the internet, what you make up yourself, is test spray your plants. And what does that mean? That means different plants react differently. So a soapy water spray, a soap and oil spray may be perfectly fine on one type of plant, but it may damage the leaves of other plants in your garden. So always test spray them. There's a greater risk of damage when temperatures go up to 90 degrees. The leaf changes on a lot of plants when the high heat comes, and they're more susceptible to anything that's sprayed on the leaves. Test spray means take a couple leaves from each plant that you have in your garden, spray it with the sprays you make, wait 48 hours, and see what happens. And I also recommend using sprays on one variety at a time. So maybe test out your tomatoes, try this out on tomatoes. If it works great for that, then move to a next plant. What you'll find is different strengths of soapy water sprays or different strengths of soap and oil sprays affect plants differently. So you have to learn what works in your garden. So I started talking about soap sprays and just basic soap, and that's probably the least risk to damaging your plants, but you have to make sure you know what you buy, and you can check out my video. You don't want harsh detergents, degreasers, all that kind of stuff. You want really a simple soap, and I use Castile soap. It's a simple basic soap. Oil sprays work by contacting the insect. So this is for killing the insects. So you have to contact the insect with the oil and soap spray. It smothers a range of insects, mostly the soft-bodied insects. It also affects immature larvae and immature beetles. When beetles get stronger and have the hard shell, the oil and soap sprays don't really kill them off. So you have to get soft-bodied insects or immature insects. Oil spray also works on fungus. So if you're just using a plain soap spray and you're spraying, say, your cucumber plants for powdery mildew, that's not going to do much. But if you add in oil, the oil coats the fungus spores, and it, in most cases, just slows down the disease from spreading. In some cases, it may kill the spores, depending on what you have. And this leaves residue. So after you spray soap and oil spray onto your plant to kill insects or to manage fungus, it is going to leave a residue on your plant leaves. So you have to be aware of that. Insects that are killed by just plain old soap spray and the addition of soap and oil are aphids, whiteflies, spider mites, mealybugs, scale, thrips, fungus gnats, beetle larvae, immature insects, and others. In my garden, this is mostly what I deal with: aphids, whiteflies, and spider mites. You always want to start with just soap, because soap and water has a less risk of damaging your plant than soap, oil, and water. And I find soap and water really works for aphids and whiteflies and spider mites. But as I add in oil, the whiteflies and spider mites seem to die off a little bit quicker. So you have to kind of get used to what works best in your garden. Vegetable oil is what I use. You can also buy horticultural oils. The main difference is the vegetable oils are cheaper. Horticultural oils can cost more. And the benefit to the horticultural oils is that they mix better or disperse throughout the water better. And I'm going to show most of the video on, I'll talk about disbursement and what that really means. The key to it is, if you use vegetable oil, you have a quart container or a gallon container, just shake it often. You want the oil not to float on top of your water. You want it to, not float there. You want it to disperse through the water. So when you spray it, oil particles are going everywhere. It's not the recipe that you use. You're going to find some recipes say put in 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons, a teaspoon, 2 teaspoons of oil. Then it'll say a tablespoon of soap, and then it'll say 2. It's just, they're all over the place. You have to get used to how you're going to make yours. But it's not really the recipe. It is the oil dispersed through the water. And let me show you what that means. Let me take that out of the way. These are some recipes I'll go over. Here's your water, and let's just say if that's a quart of water, you're going to see the vegetable oil floats on the top. that's not going to do anything in your sprayer if you don't mix water in it. There's not much dispersed throughout there. So I use Castile soap. It's a very simple soap. This is probably more than you need in there, but this is just for the sake of the video. And then you stir it up. I don't want to get too many bubbles. But you can see the oil that was floating on top is into little tiny beads. Let's see if I move the light, if you can see it reflect in there. But it's little tiny beads, and it's dispersing more through the water. If, in a couple of minutes you noticed too much oil coming up here, then you add in a little more. But as I stir it, the oil gets really well dispersed through the water. So that's how you want your recipes to be. So for instance, if you decide to put in a teaspoon of oil, because that's all you want to use, you don't have to put in exactly 1 teaspoon of soap, 2 teaspoons of soap, 1 tablespoon of soap. You just have to put enough in there to disperse the oil out, so you can really kind of eyeball that. So that's why oil has to be mixed with soap. You can't just do a water and oil spray. It doesn't mix. The other thing you can make, and I'm going to do that this year, is you can pre-make your oil. And this is a Premade Oil Soap spray. Let me go over that real quick. Let's back it up so you can see it. The Premade Oil Soap Spray, couple things, is caution. I'm using a simple soap. You don't want to use soap with detergents, concentrate, antibacterials, just simple soap. So if you do end up using something that has more concentrate to it, or is a stronger soap, you use less. So I just want to be clear that this recipe here is for the Castile soap. So it's 1 cup of vegetable oil, 8 ounces or 250 milliliters, mixed in with 3 tablespoons of Castile soap, 45 milliliters. And the way that you use it is after you pre-make it in here, it's 1 to 2 teaspoons per quart or per 650 milliliters, or that's 5 to 10 milliliters of the mix into 650 milliliters of water. And you just make it, so 1 cup of oil, about 3 tablespoons of the Castile soap. And this is a very, very mild, simple soap. I wouldn't want to do this with like Dawn dishwashing detergent or something that's a concentrate. Maybe 1 tablespoon in there. Mix it up, and you have the base ingredients for your oil and soap spray in 1 jar. And again, you end up using 1 to 2 teaspoons per quart or per 650 milliliters. It's a nice way to kind of just set up your oil and soap spray for the season and use it right out of here. Before you would use it, just give it a good shake, and then you can take care of it or use it when you need to. I wanted to go over the soapy water sprays real quick too, and you can check out the original video. Again, soapy water spray, simple liquid soap is what I tend to use. You want the liquid soap. You don't really want the harsh detergents that you can find like in the supermarket. Read the label, and that video will talk to you about how to do that. But I usually use 1 to 2 teaspoons of soap, 5 to 10 milliliters into 1 quart of water, 950 milliliters, and you build up from the formula all the way up to 3 teaspoons. So whenever you're doing this, start with less soap and work your way up. You'll learn as you've come to different concentrations. You may find 1 teaspoon works perfectly fine on aphids, 2 teaspoons works better on aphids, adding in some oil works even more effectively on aphids and whiteflies or something like that. But don't just go for 3 teaspoons of oil, 3 teaspoons of soap. Start with less. That's the safest way to learn about what works in your garden. And then finally, in a quart container, just like this, fill it up. It's 2 to 3 teaspoons of vegetable oil. That's 5 to 10 milliliters, and then 1 to 3 teaspoons of soap, and that's 5 to 15 milliliters. Just like I was saying, if you're using the Castile soap, you know you use more because it's a weaker, simple, safer soap. If you have something that's more concentrated, use less. And again, use less for concentrated, more harsh type soaps. It's really, really important. I'm a little bit always cautious that, and you may notice I'm not giving you exact recipes, because a recipe that works in my area is based on the soap I select, based on the oil I select, based on the temperature, based on when I spray. So it may be perfectly fine in my garden. You follow it exactly as I tell you, it burned your plants. So you really have to know what you're doing with these products. Even though that they're really safe and it's hard to damage your plants, it's very, very possible. And I've done it before. So this is how you use oil in the garden. This is how you use soap in the garden. This is how you make an oil soap spray to manage pests and disease. And again, let's end with less of these ingredients in your soap. Less phosphates, no triclosan. You don't want really sodium lauryl sulfate. You don't need it. You don't want fragrances. You don't want dyes. You don't want antimicrobials. Microbials. Or antibacterials. You don't want grease cutters, and to be honest with you, some of the detergents that you buy aren't soaps at all, they're detergents. So you really, really need to look at what kind of soap you believe you're buying. Hope you enjoyed the video and it gives you a good idea of how to make some oil sprays for your garden. I think this is one of the best ways to go about it, pre-make it. Please check out my blog at www.therustedgarden.blogspot.com and also check out my YouTube videos. Thanks.